If you're thinking about moving to Chesapeake, Virginia, I want you to avoid one of the biggest mistakes I see people make. Most people spend weeks researching home prices, scrolling through listings, comparing neighborhoods, and watching videos trying to figure out whether Chesapeake is a good place to live. But in my experience, that's actually the wrong question. The better question is, will you actually enjoy living here once the excitement of moving wears off? Because those are two totally different questions. I've worked with people who absolutely love Chesapeake. They tell me all the time that they can't imagine living anywhere else in Hampton Roads. But I've also worked with people who bought a beautiful home, unpacked every box, settled into their new routine, and a few months later realized another city probably would have been a better fit for the lifestyle they wanted. It wasn't because there was anything wrong with Chesapeake. It wasn't because they bought the wrong house. It was simply because they didn't fully understand what everyday life here actually felt like before they made one of the biggest decisions of their lives. So today, I want to help you answer that question. Not whether Chesapeake is a good city, but whether it's the right city for you. By the end of this video, I think you'll have a much clearer picture of what living here is really like, who tends to appreciate Chesapeake the most, what surprises people after they move here, and most importantly, some of the trade-offs that don't always get talked about, because every city has them. And I believe understanding those trade-offs before you move is one of the smartest things you can do. Now, if we've never met before, I'm Kerry Tanner, realtor with AtCoastal Realty, located here in the Hampton Roads area. I help buyers and sellers relocate to, from, and throughout the Hampton Roads and the surrounding areas. Every week, I create videos like this to help you make a confident real estate decision so you can avoid costly mistakes and feel confident about your move. Now, let's jump back into Chesapeake because I think this is where so many relocation videos miss the mark. One of the first things I tell people is that Chesapeake doesn't really feel like one city. And I know that probably sounds strange, but once you've spent time here, you'll understand exactly what I mean. There are very few cities in Hampton Roads that offer as much variety as Chesapeake does. You can be driving through one area, surrounded by newer neighborhoods, shopping centers, restaurants, and busy roads. And 15 minutes later, you'll feel like you've entered a completely different world with larger properties, open spaces, wooded areas, and a much quieter pace. That's one of the reasons I almost never answer the question, what is Chesapeake like? Instead, I usually respond with a question, which part of Chesapeake are you thinking about? Because your experience living here can be completely different depending on where you choose to live. And I don't say that to make the decision harder. I say that because I want you to make a better decision based on your specific lifestyle requirements. So if you're relocating from another state and you're only visiting for a weekend before buying a home, it's very easy to drive through one section of Chesapeake and assume the entire city feels the same. It doesn't. And honestly, I think that's one of Chesapeake's biggest strengths. It gives people options. One of the things I've noticed over the years is that buyers moving here aren't all looking for the same lifestyle. Some people want a neighborhood where they can be close to shopping, restaurants, and everyday conveniences. Others tell me they want a little more breathing room. Maybe they'd like a larger yard. Maybe they want space for a boat or an RV. Maybe they simply don't want to feel like every home is sitting right on top of the next. The nice thing about Chesapeake is that it offers enough variety that many buyers can find something that fits the way they actually want to live. And I think that's a much better way to evaluate a city than simply asking whether it's a popular city or whether the home values have increased in that city. Now, don't get me wrong, those two things definitely matter, but they don't determine whether you're going to enjoy waking up there every morning. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're relocating is that they spend almost all of their time trying to find the perfect home. Very little time is spent asking whether they've chosen the right city. And that's backwards, in my opinion, because you can renovate a kitchen, you can replace flooring, you can remodel a bathroom. But what you can't easily change is your daily lifestyle. If you're spending more time in traffic than you expected, or if you're further away from the places you enjoy, if your routine doesn't match the way you like to live, you're going to feel that every single day. And that's why I encourage people to think about their life first, then choose the house that supports it. For example, one question I ask almost every relocation buyer is, what does the perfect Saturday look like for you? And it's interesting because almost nobody expects that question, but their answer tells me far more than asking whether they want 3 bedrooms or 4. If someone tells me they love spending the weekends on water, that matters. If they tell me they enjoy exploring parks and trails, that matters. If they tell me they want to be close to great restaurants, that matters too, because all of those answers help us narrow down where they might enjoy living, not just where they can afford to buy. And that's exactly how I think you should evaluate Chesapeake or anywhere you're thinking about living. Not as a collection of neighborhoods, but as a place of where you're building your everyday life. Now, let's talk about something I know almost every relocation buyer is wondering. What can I actually afford in Chesapeake? And while that's an important question, I don't think it's the first question you should ask. Instead, I'd ask, what kind of lifestyle can my budget create? Because that's really what you're buying. You're not buying an average home. You're buying one specific home in one specific location with one specific lifestyle attached to it. One of the things I appreciate about Chesapeake is the variety of housing options available throughout the city. Depending on your budget and the areas you're considering, you may find newer construction, established neighborhoods with mature landscaping, homes with larger lots, waterfront properties, townhomes, condos, or communities with amenities that fit different lifestyles and preferences. All of that is important because buyers relocating from different parts of the country have very different expectations. I've worked with people moving from California who were pleasantly surprised by what their budget could buy here. I've also worked with buyers coming from areas with lower cost of living who experience Chesapeake very differently. Neither perspective is wrong. It's simply a reminder that value is always relative to where you're coming from and what you're hoping to accomplish. That's why I rarely spend much time talking about average home prices. Average prices don't help you decide whether Chesapeake is right for you. Instead, I like to focus on what your budget can realistically accomplish. Can you find a home that supports the lifestyle that you want? Can you find a location that makes your daily commute enjoyable? Can you find something that gives you flexibility for the future? Those are much better questions that you should consider. Now, if you've been watching the national housing market, you've probably heard all kinds of opinions. Some people are convinced we're heading towards another housing crash. Others believe prices are going to continue to climb. And the reality is that every local market behaves differently. That's one of the reasons I always encourage buyers to understand what's happening right here in Hampton Roads instead of making a decision based entirely on national headlines. Local inventory, local demand, local employment, military transfers, new construction, interest rates, All of those things influence our market, and they don't always move in the same direction as the national news. So if you're serious about relocating here, I think it's much more valuable to understand how today's market affects your specific situation than trying to predict exactly what home prices will do next year. Now, let's switch gears and talk about something that can have an even bigger impact on your quality of life than the house itself: your commute. This is one area where I think a lot of people relocating to Hampton Roads can easily underestimate what daily life is going to look like. When you're looking at a map, everything seems fairly close together, but Hampton Roads has a geography that's unlike many other metropolitan areas. We're connected by rivers, bridges, bridge tunnels, and waterways. That means two locations that appear close to each other on a map can have a very different travel experience depending on where you're going and when you're traveling. One of the first conversations I have with relocation buyers isn't about bedrooms or bathrooms. It's about routine. Where will you be working? How often will you commute? Will you be working remotely? How important is being close to shopping? How often do you see yourself driving to Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Suffolk, Portsmouth? Because once we answer those questions, the search becomes much more focused. I've had buyers completely change the area they wanted to live after we walked through what their typical week would actually look like. Not because there was anything wrong with the first neighborhood, but because another location supported their lifestyle much, much better. And that's something that I really want you to think about if you're considering relocating here. Don't just choose a city because you've Googled it. Choose the routine you want to live. Now, another thing I think surprises people that are living in Chesapeake is that you're not isolated from everything else. Actually, it's one of the things that many people appreciate most. Depending on where you live, you can enjoy a quieter residential setting while still having access to everything throughout Hampton Roads. Want to spend Saturday afternoon at Virginia Beach oceanfront? You can. Meet friends for dinner in Norfolk? Absolutely. Catch a concert, explore a museum, spend time in Williamsburg, or head out to the water. Those experiences are all a part of living in this region. I think that's one of the biggest advantages that people sometimes overlook. You're not just choosing Chesapeake, you're choosing access to an entire region with a wide variety of things to do. Now, let's talk about one question that almost always comes up during relocation consultations: flooding. If you're relocating here from another part of the country, this may not be something that you've had to think about before. And the answer isn't as simple as saying yes or no. Like many coastal communities, flood risks vary depending on the specific property and its location. Some homes may require flood insurance and others may not. That's why I always encourage buyers to evaluate each property individually rather than making assumptions about an entire city. Fortunately, there are tools available that will allow you to review flood information before making an offer, and that's something I walk my clients through during the home buying process. The goal isn't to create fear. The goal is simply to make informed decisions, because that's really what this entire channel is about. Helping you understand the questions to ask before making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. Now, let's shift away from logistics for a minute and talk about something that rarely shows up on a spreadsheet. What does it actually feel like to live in Chesapeake every day? I think that's one of the hardest things to explain because it's not something you'll find on a home search website. It's something you actually experience. One thing that I've consistently noticed is people who enjoy Chesapeake usually aren't looking for the fast-paced lifestyle. They're looking for the balance. They want room to breathe. They appreciate having options. They enjoy being able to get out on the water, spend time outdoors, or simply come home to a neighborhood that feels a little less hectic at the end of the day. And while every person's experience is different, That's a theme I hear over and over again. I also think Chesapeake gives you something that's becoming harder to find in many parts of the country: flexibility. You don't have to choose between being completely rural or completely urban. Depending on where you live, you can find something that falls somewhere in the middle. That's one of the reasons I almost never describe Chesapeake with a single word. It simply isn't that kind of city. Now, does that mean it's perfect? Of course not. No city is. And I think it's important that we talk honestly about the trade-offs, because those are what help people make a better decision. If your ideal Saturday involves walking to your favorite coffee shop, spending the afternoon browsing local boutiques, and finishing the evening with dinner just a few blocks from home, there are other parts of Hampton Roads that may align more closely with that lifestyle. If you prefer living in a highly urban environment where everything is within walking distance, Chesapeake may not be the best fit. On the other hand, if you're comfortable driving to different parts of the region and your priority is having more flexibility in the type of home you buy, more outdoor recreation, or simply little more room than you might find elsewhere, Chesapeake becomes a very compelling option. Neither lifestyle is better. They're simply different. My goal isn't to convince you that Chesapeake is the best city in Hampton Roads, because I honestly don't believe there is a single best city. Every city offers a different experience. My job is to help you understand which experience fits the lifestyle you're trying to build. Now, before we wrap up, I want to share something I've learned after helping so many people relocate here. The buyers who are happiest a year after they move usually aren't the ones who found the absolute lowest interest rate, or negotiated the biggest discount, or even found the largest house. The happiest buyers are usually the ones who choose a community that fit their lifestyle. Because after the boxes are unpacked, after the excitement of closing day wears off, real life begins. That's when your commute matters. That's when the places you spend your weekends matter. That's when being close to the things you enjoy starts shaping your everyday experience. And that's why I believe choosing the right city is every bit as important as choosing the right house. So would I recommend Chesapeake? Absolutely. But the final decision really depends on what you want your lifestyle to look like. If you're looking for a community that offers a wide variety of housing options, access to outdoor recreation, the flexibility to enjoy everything Hampton Roads has to offer, and you're comfortable with a lifestyle where driving is simply a part of everyday life, then I think Chesapeake deserves a very serious look. But if your priorities lean more towards an urban environment, highly walkable areas, or having restaurants and entertainment just outside your front door, then I'd encourage you to compare Chesapeake with some of the other cities throughout Hampton Roads before making your final decision. And honestly, that's what we're going to do in the next video, because I don't think you should choose a city until you've compared your options. If you're planning a move to Hampton Roads and you're trying to figure out which city is the right fit, I'd love to help. You'll find links both in the description and pinned comments where you can call, send me an email, or schedule a time directly on my calendar. We'll have a conversation about your goals, the lifestyle you're looking for, and what matters most to you, so you can make a confident decision before you ever start touring homes. And before you go, I highly recommend watching my next video where I'll compare Chesapeake and Virginia Beach side by side. They're both two incredible cities, but they offer very different lifestyles. And understanding those differences can save you a tremendous amount of time, money, and frustration during your home search. If videos like this are helping you make more confident real estate decisions, I'd love to have you subscribe, because every week I share practical guidance to help buyers and sellers relocate to, from, and throughout the Hampton Roads area with confidence. Thanks so much for spending a part of your day with me, and I'll catch you on the next one.